Let's have a little chat. I don't often talk about my childhood because there's just not a lot of good stuff to talk about. But growing up, I lived mostly with my mother. And later on in my life, during my teen years, she was incredibly neglectful. There were nights where I would come home from school and there just wasn't really anything to eat. She hardly ever cooked. She never fucking cleaned. House is a fucking mess. And a result of this was that I hardly got any food that was actually good for me. By the time I got out of there, when I turned 18, I had found out that I was having heart palpitations. Most of my life, I thought that was just, from exercising or whatever. No, turns out I actually had, I forget what it's called, but heart palpitations. And it was because of, as far as I can tell, a poor diet and stress. If anything, the only healthy food that I really got was from school. That was one good thing that I think I had growing up that I kind of wish more kids had, was access to free lunches at school. And as terrible as they started getting once Trump got into office, it was still better for me than whatever my mother was feeding me. Like, throughout the summer, it was mostly just, fast food crap like Wendy's and Taco Bell and fucking Arby's. I know, horrifying. I had to eat Arby's. But, yeah, jokes aside, it was just really bad for me. And then when I got back into school, I would load up on as much of the school lunches as I could because I knew that when I got back home, I wouldn't be getting any food that was actually like not going to kill me. And I remember going through the lunch line, just filling up my tray as much as I possibly could. And this is actually a story I tell everyone. So there was a rule at the school where like you could only pick one of each, or like one serving of each item. So what I would often do is I would go line to line picking out all of the different items. Like I would go through each line just to make sure I technically got one of each item. Eventually, next year we came back to school and they were cracking down on that, but I also wouldn't be surprised if the servers in the lunch line also just kind of turned a blind eye because, like, looking back, I think they probably knew. Like, there's no way they didn't. But yeah. So, in short, like, school lunches quite literally saved my life. Like, if it wasn't for actually getting some food that, was actually giving me proper nutrition, probably wouldn't be here right now. So, yeah. That's why I've been talking so much about, like, so much of this stuff lately, is because I feel like I kind of have to. Like, personally, I personally would not be here if it were not for free school lunches. That shit quite literally saved my fucking life. And I do not exaggerate when I say that. So every time I see news of like another fucking budget cut to SNAP or like Social Security getting another fucking like wave of like people being taken off of it, it upsets me because I just know that someone out there who really needed it is not getting it now. somewhere out there, there's a kid just like what I was, who whose life literally depends on programs like this, who is now going to go hungry because of it, because of like it getting cut. And even right now, I'm not like fully taken off of it. Like I still have to depend on Social Security for a number of other reasons. My partner is still trying to get SNAP benefits. There's a whole rigmarole basically right now, and it's just really stressful because we don't even know if we're going to be able to get it. But I would like for one day for these kinds of conversations to just not have to happen because like no duh, some people just can't work. Some people can't like fully sustain themselves just on a full time or even like two full time jobs. There's some places in the country and even in other first world countries where a full time job just doesn't cover it anymore. And I know this is like really depressing, the stuff I've been talking about lately, but I do feel like it's important, especially when it comes to stuff that involves just regular people, people like me, people like you, like everyone watching this video. I'm sure you've probably had encounters with someone who you've seen has to depend on stuff like this, and then when they get removed from these programs, it's scary because, well, it's the question of like, well, what the hell do you do now? So the reason I brought up this story too, the reason I'm talking about, like, again, not exaggerating, school lunches saved my life. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I want people to start putting themselves in the shoes of the people who depend on these programs. And every time they talk about, like, you know, the fucking welfare queen stereotype from like the Reagan days, I just want people to realize that those like that idea you put in your head of like the person who's like eating fucking T-bone steaks and lobster and all that shit on fucking food stamps. Like, I hope you know just how exaggerated those are. They're not even really true. And anytime you hear about someone getting soda on food stamps, you know the main reason for that is because soda is cheaper than water, right? Like, it would be so difficult for someone on food stamps to just get healthy food. For one, transportation is another issue. People living in rural areas, they're not going to always have access to like fresh produce. So what they do is they'll stock up on frozens and non-perishables, and then they try to stretch that through the month. That's what I did for a long time. That's kind of what I've been having to do again now. And soda, so like, you know, that and then like frozen meals, oftentimes that's just all someone can really afford to keep long term. They'll stock up on these things because they last longer, and unfortunately, in our backwards ass system, unhealthy food is cheaper. It's way more expensive trying to get fresh vegetables and fruits and all that stuff just because they make it so damn expensive. And then there's the fact that to do this, you would have to go out basically every few days just to stock up on these fresh foods. And that costs gas money. Unless you live in a city like New York where you have access to public transport. What the? Jesus. Anyway. So fuck. Alright. So as I was saying, unless you live in a city where you have access to public transit, like buses or trains, then you have to drive. And not everyone is going to be able to afford to keep gas in their tanks. Even if you have an EV and you can just charge it at home, that still costs money. That eats into your electricity bill. So, like, either way, it costs more money to go out every few days than it would to stock up on stuff that you know is going to last in your pantry. There's, I forget where this was. I think it was in like a book, but there's a saying that when a poor, I'll look into this later. I don't have the energy to do it right now, but I'm sure you probably heard it a million times anyway. There's the idea that when a poor person buys boots, they have to buy it for like way cheap. When a rich person buys boots, they can pay more and then get boots that like last a lot longer. And the idea is that if a poor person buys a pair of boots and then they wear them every day because, you know, they have to, they wear out quicker, they have to buy even more later. And then by like the same amount of time passing for that person and a rich person, the rich person still has their boots that they paid like a certain amount for, while the poor person keeps having to buy them over and over. Let me put this in more modern terms, actually, because I'm just realizing it would probably make more sense if I use a different analogy. So you know how everything is basically financed through Klarna these days? Let's think about something real quick. So Sony, for example, is trying to lease PlayStation 5s, or what was it? Like I forget the exact price. But let's just say as an example, you lease it for $20 a month. All right, it would not take long for you to make enough payments that you'd be paying even more than if you just bought it outright. Like, yeah, when you finance something, it's cheaper up front, but you end up paying so much more money than buying it outright. But it's a luxury that people in poverty just can't they can't do. People with limited income can't pay more upfront for stuff that's way easier for people with more wealth. It's a concept called poverty tax. And it's just so frustrating because, like, to most people, this is a very simple thing to explain. But for just a few people out there, it's just so difficult getting through their head just how bad people in poverty have it. People who can't afford the means to make their situations better. So, yeah, that's why I get so personal about this kind of stuff, because I literally live that reality every day of my life. If it were not for those programs that gave me food that I could actually eat and not, like, you know, clog my fucking arteries, were it not for programs that catch me fed in the midst of having to deal with a toxic home environment, I just don't know if I would actually be here right now. I'm not kidding when I say this shit saved my life. And I just sad because there are a lot of people being taken off of these programs when they need it even more than I did. But yeah, that's it for now. I'm out.